Welcome to Soltron. I'm just going to do a quick video about all the mods I gave to the Boonboomger Robo, so you can get a quick view of how he looks all the way around. Maybe you could see some of those mods already. Okay, so I did a lot of articulation mods. So now he has a head that can rotate, so it can go pretty much any direction. He's a little bit limited on the side to side movement, but there's enough there that he's clearly looking to the side. He can't really do much up or down motion, but the side to side was the important thing for me. And then I think just as important as that articulation was, I gave him these elbow joints, so now he can actually pose with his different weapons, so that's pretty cool. So I think that's pretty useful articulation, is for him to have elbows that can move around. And then another very pointless piece of articulation I did was, usually his A stance is here. So you get his normal one, his default click, and then you get one click here, actually one click here. And now he's got a second click, which is kind of pointless, just so he can get a wider A stance. And this was actually way harder to do than I thought it was going to be. So just trimming this off is not enough. You actually have to do some pretty intense trimming inside. And then for what you get, like this one extra click of articulation is very pointless. So I wouldn't even recommend even bothering with this. But I think he looks pretty cool with his weapons out and this wider A stance. I think it's good for this combined form. And the other thing he got is now his cape. I put ball joints on these, so these can still be detached if they need to, but now these have ball joints so they can like fan out of the way, and you can get some more extreme looking posing. You could just have these like all the way back, like his powerful cannon is causing his cape to flow out behind him. And then it's very cool that his shield can now actually sort of be posed in a protective way. You have to get all his shoulder pads out of the way, but you can definitely get this into poses that are more reasonable. So yeah, I think that makes this figure a lot more fun. And of course, he's a lot more fiddly, but let's look at some of his other forms. Actually, before we get into the other forms, let's take a look at the head and how I got this thing to work. So now it has this double ball joint, and that's what actually lets the head look side to side and get a little, and fill up the chest a little bit better. But it can still collapse all the way down into its default position. And then we can go ahead and transform this into the lion mode. This is a little bit tighter. I had to actually destroy the friction joint. But yeah, this is what his lion head is going to look like. And you can see I painted his teeth, painted this copper. And he's technically got like a biting jaw now with this joint, which is pretty cool. And then he can also look side to side, but it's kind of pointless. He has to like dislocate his jaw. But yeah, I think that improves his lion form. And actually, while we're talking about 119, I painted his mane this copper color. Copper was kind of a weird choice, but he already had copper here, so it gave me the idea that I could just go copper on his mane, and I think that differentiates the mane a little bit. And then I painted the inside here, so you can kind of see his mane a little bit more clearly. And then I realized that this guy does have gold paint on him, so I might actually just go back over this with gold. That's more of a traditional Power Rangers color anyway. They use that on all the final forms. But yeah, so you can see now he's able to do some biting, which is cool. And then if you want him to like look to the side, he can sort of do it. It looks kind of weird and awkward, but he can do it. So that's pretty cool. And then we can just get this thing we could just compress it all down and it still pretty much pegs into place. And then the spring-loaded gimmick is still kind of there, but it does require like some force to get it out. So it does sacrifice the spring-loaded gimmick a little bit, but this is what his fire truck mode looks like. So it looks exactly the same, right? There's not really much difference. So not very many sacrifices had to be made. And then if we just get this guy into fire truck mode, you can see this what his fire truck looks like. He's got this copper in the front, which I think works out well because the mini cab also has copper. So I think this is actually a good color combo for him. And here we get a 360 view of the Boonboomger Robo. And you can see he looks pretty cool with his cape flowing out, and definitely his elbows really help with the articulation. I didn't really use it for this arm, but this arm, the elbow is definitely in action. And you can see I also gave him, you can tell he's got a ball joint neck, so now he can look in all directions. So I think that really helps with his expressiveness. So he's got this ball joint neck now, so now he can look in all directions, and it does collapse down for transformation, so it goes back to its original position, but his head's not so sunken into his chest, so I think that actually helps his look a lot. And then having this claw is probably like my favorite thing. It just looks very cool. You can kind of rotate. You want his claw to look like it's doing an uppercut kind of motion or something. But yeah, so now his elbows also have rotating biceps as well. But yeah, he's just a lot of fun. And then I forgot to mention, I did do his knee mod. So you could see his knee can go to 45 degrees or it can be straight. Not a very useful mod, to be honest. So the hip mod was very pointless. And then this knee mod is not the best because he's very hard to pose like this. I think I might have to mod his feet too and give him some ball jointed feet just to make this a little bit better. And then he doesn't have a thigh cut still, which also makes his knee mod a little bit more pointless. But you can see, get some cool poses out of him now that he's got these knees, and he can of course do his like crouching pose. And then I did, just like I said I was going to do on the review of this guy, all I did was I just cut this. You have to cut the back too. And then this has to be sanded down as well. But overall, it didn't really hurt his stability. He stands up just fine. He's still good. He's not going to fall backwards. So I think he'll still work out with his combinations. I do want to give him a thigh cut, but when you open up his thighs, there's actually not any room to put anything in there. So I'm going to have to figure out how to redo his knees. But yeah, I really love this form. He's so stylish and cool looking. But yeah, let's look at another form. Okay, and here he is with his guns, so you can get some good like aiming poses out of this or whatever. Again, this is my least favorite form. I don't care about this. I didn't bother giving this guy head articulation because again, this is like, I just don't care about this form. But you can get him like walking with his pistols, which is pretty cool because you got those 90 degree elbows now. Actually, it's a little bit, you get more than 90 degrees. So you can get some pretty cool shooting poses with his capes like flaring out. He can't look around, so it's not going to be too dynamic. Of course, that would look a lot cooler if he could actually look at what he's shooting. But again, don't like this form, don't care. And here's a form where it is really important for him to have elbows so he can like pose his sword. And then I didn't do anything with this head joint either, but I probably will in the future where I give him a ball joint. He probably won't ever be able to look this way just because the way he transforms, but I can definitely improve his ability to look this way. But he already has that articulation, so it's not really much of a priority. But you get this cool looking pose, or he can just like have his arm out where he's like throwing his cape off to the side. So you get some really cool posing options once this guy has some elbow articulation. Oh yeah, and one more thing I wanted to point out while I got this basic form is you can see how skinny his arms are, but his arms can also rotate this way. Give them a little bit more of a natural look instead of just always being ready to fight. You can rotate this way a little bit. And then with his construction form or his build form or whatever it's called, he's got his hammer, so it's good to have that elbow articulation so he can do that. He still doesn't have any head articulation. I could probably just put a ball joint right there, and that will enable his head to look left and right. So I might do that someday. But you can see he's not looking very different with this articulation. You can just get somewhat more natural posing. But the lack of head articulation really limits him. Oh, and I guess we have to count this dumb form too. So I popped off his cape and there he is. And now he can look, well, he can try to look left and right without his visor falling off. And then I didn't extend his neck, so it's pretty buried in there. But that's like the default position of his neck. Okay, and you're probably wondering, does this still transform? Well, here's his gait mode, and you can see there's his arm joints. So his arms are still in the correct position, and then his head is still in the correct position, even with the new extending joint. You can see the wheels on the head don't quite line up in the correct place, but they're close enough. And then you can just, oh yeah, and then you can see the ball joints for his cape. Don't really interfere with the rail system. They do make it a little bit more floppy. And then you can just close them up. I haven't actually transformed this guy yet, so I'm hoping this isn't embarrassing. It looks like everything's in the right position. We just close that up. Okay, and now he's not closing up for some reason. Oh, there he goes. And you can see this wheel's a little bit messed up because of his new neck articulation, but oh well. I think it's worth it. And there he is in trailer form. So looks pretty much indistinguishable from the original figure. All of that still fits in just perfectly. So yeah, pretty fun art, pretty fun mod. It did take a little while. It was harder than everything was a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be, but it ended up paying off in the long run. So let me know your thoughts and I'll see you in the next one.